raise the consciousness. But then, everyone moved on, and so we moved on to whatever was the next trend. And I guess in my mind, I was like, all right, we're done. That was good. And when I met Quick, I always tell people I was not into the culture at all. The person you see now is not who I was. I was smoking blunts and drinking 40s, kicking rhymes in the staircase, just, hey, this is hip hop. And when he circled me back to what the culture is and how we have to be resistant and defiant and we have to be, conscious, I kind of felt like, oh, right, I remember that. That was a thing. I was lost. And so when I started to break, and Quick brought me to his teachers, and then I met two individuals from Germany who were breaking, and I was like, y'all do hip hop in Germany? What? What do y'all do? Why you do that? But they were so 100 about it, it sparked something in me, and I was like, well, I gotta be the next representative, for hip hop. And at that time, there weren't that many B-girls. And matter of fact, there weren't that many B-boys. Because it wasn't popular anymore. And so Quick had some sessions. I was helping him to organize those sessions. But through the VHSs that were circulating, I had seen Asia One. I had seen Lady Champ from Chicago. So I knew there was some of us out there. And then when I met a B-girl from Italy, she really put the fire under my ass. And I was like, she's from Italy and she's doing this better than me? I gotta go back and do more push-ups. Like, something's gotta, I gotta really rep, because I'm from the source. I'm Puerto Rican, I'm, Afro-Latina, I'm from the Bronx. Like, why am I weak? Why am I like, man, it hurts. I'm like, life hurts. So, I ain't gonna stop living. Let's push harder. And so I did. And being around the people that Quick said brought me to, I understood the history. That, like, Asia, me and you noticed, when we would hang out with the elders, they'd be like, what's the name of this breakbeat? Title and artist, year. And we'd be like, Scorpio, this is like quickly, like it was the quiz, the test. You weren't official until you knew the history and the time and what crew was from Bushwick, whatever. Right, and so I was a reflection of, that next wave of hip hoppers who needed to preserve this. We needed to make sure that it doesn't, it was almost like a defiance. And so as a woman, I felt like I am an equal because I'm also at the risk of being eliminated, erased, smothered, So I came in already believing I was an equal. And I always say, like, what was my relationship to hip hop at that time? It was equal. I was coming in, I was practicing, I was doing the moves, I was getting the bruises that the guys were getting from learning windmills and stuff. I got a bald spot over here, you see I cover it. So I really did feel kindred, like vibes with the other B-boys. Now, that's not to say that there weren't B-boys, and one B-boy in particular who did not like me and did not like that I was trying to recruit other girls. I was trying, everybody, let's do push-ups together. Yeah, ladies, come on. That did not sit right, because some men don't know how to relate to women who are just as smart, just as skilled, just as like physically strong. And that doesn't, then they're not ready for that. So I did encounter resistance, and it wasn't all G. There was some times when I felt like elbows were coming at me and I was being blocked and blacklisted. But I still felt like I had something to show, I had something to give. And thankfully the people around me were like, yeah, you need to put the elbow here, Rock, or no, Rock, you gotta reach back here to get that headspin to go. So I did have people who were like, women should do power moves. And so I kind of prided myself in the fact that I could go in a circle and I could take the heart of any guy, rock a fella. I wasn't rocking the sisters, rocking the fellas. I was recruiting the sisters to join the ranks. Yep. And so, it was a good moment. Thank you for asking me that, Asia, because it is a trajectory that I had no idea I was going to be on. And I didn't know that in 2022 I'd be talking, and being a professor and, inspiring people. It wasn't, again, I come from a place, it's the hood, the relationship that my relatives who were women were toxic with their husbands, with the, I don't even need to get into that, but I just want to say that I found my home in hip hop because of the blueprint that the elders set for me. And so I'm here in gratitude. I have a lot of respect for the men, young and old, who choose to do this style and choose to do this culture. A lot of respect for y'all. I know it's not easy, but respect the women. We're coming in with some skills, some knowledge, some connections. and we just want to build. We want a team with y'all. We want to, build a team. So that's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Rob. That's a great segue into the next question. Equals, building teams, healthy relationships, and I just want to turn it over to May and Louie with the Goodfoot Arts Collective, and really specifically kind of go into that as far as I mean, it was kind of our question we kind of brought up was, both of you have been around the hip hop scene, the hip hop culture, the lifestyle, and there's things about the past hip hop, like whatever generation you partook in, that have been good, and some things that have been bad, right, in general, with the culture, with how people interact, with relationships, and more about like what about the past would you consider valuable to bring forward, continued, as well as like that should move into the future of the culture, as well as like a little bit also too about what kind of channeling what Rob was talking about on healthy relationships and bringing that forward into our scene. And can you kind of build into that, like maybe talk about again, what do you think from the past is important to move into the future as far as this culture and as far as relationships and how that works, and then what isn't, and what can we do about it, and what are you guys focused on doing about that as far as individually and as an organization?
Ooh, that's a big question. That's a big question. And I want to just preface this with saying, like, this is just my personal experience and expertise answering and responding to this. Everybody got their own knowledge. Everybody has their own life experiences. And I just really want to sit and also honor the OGs, the ones that came before us. The language we're using now is, I know I'm a guest in the culture. Although we have a diverse ethnic makeup and how hip-hop was created, which came from struggle, there's shared struggle in that, but we know that this is Black culture, that we have taken bits and pieces of it and kind of made it our own. And so much love and respect. So, and anything that I say, it's really based off my own personal experience, you know what I'm saying? So I just really want to respect that. And a little bit of background is, in New Mexico growing up, we kicked it with like Native kids, Pueblo, Navajo, Mexicans, Black people, Asians, all that. And so that is and we all were poor kids. We were just poor kids. And so hip hop gave us a sense of identity and safety, you know what I'm saying? And so when I started dancing, and I gotta be honest and say that in my family upbringing, because we gotta always, if we're gonna be honest, we gotta bring it all the way down to the family makeup. My parents were refugees. And so, they came to a country where I was, kids was hating on each other based on how we looked. And the system didn't help either because they kept us in poverty, right? There's a racial dynamic, there's a racial backdrop to the USA. And we don't need to get into all that because we all kind of know. We don't need to this is historically proven, it's factual, right? So there's certain things that are happening within that has birthed the hip hop scene, that there's a shared struggle. So I speak to this as a guest in my own experience, as a refugee kid from Laos, you know what I'm saying? And so with that, the good things is that hip hop gave us a sense of identity, a sense of power, a sense of unity, a sense of family, right? When I was running away from my family because things were messed up or whatever, I didn't have the language to understand what anger was, what abuse was, what was addiction, what was mental health, what was depression, what was suicidal tendencies, all these things that was just bottled up as a kid. You don't have language for that. But when you just hit the floor, you just with your boys, some of y'all getting high or getting drunk, whatever, that was a sense. Again, I'm not promoting none of that because I work with young people, but I understand the culture. I understand why we try to run from things because it's too hard to deal with. You feel me? Like, we all come from that on some level, right? So with that, nobody taught me about abuse. Nobody taught me I didn't have a father that really taught me how to properly take a lady out on a date. You know what I'm saying? So, and then you have this hip hop thing where just all of a sudden you're like, yo, you guys are dope. You guys are hype now, man. Your name's all over. You guys are winning jams, blah, 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 da, 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 da. And then, that shows you some level of love and acceptance, and that becomes an addictive thing. That becomes, it becomes an idol, right? We call it an idol. We put everything into that, right? And so, at least, again, from my own experience, these are the things that I love about hip hop. Again, I just wrote a couple things down. It's specific to the work that we did in school because there was nothing else for us. There was nothing else for us. White people were not letting us into the Boys and Girls Clubs. White people were not letting us into the YMCAs based on how we looked. You know what I'm saying? So there, again, there's a racial thread to all of this. Why we had to kind of come up with something. And it was something that we had ownership of, right? And so that's the power in hip hop. And so for me to stand up here and be like, yo, we got these answers for y'all, like, we don't have the answers. We're figuring it out. We're figuring it out as we go. And that's the immigrant refugee struggle. We just figure it out. Y'all feel me? We're gonna figure it out. We still here. We're a resilient community, right? And we always figure it out, you know what I'm saying? And so with that said, the things that will relate to my answer has to do with the toxic culture that I grew up with, you know. And I'm not putting no shade on my family, and because my parents were amazing, and there's been a lot of reconciliation, there's been a lot of healing, but there was abuse all up in my family. You know, my mom was abusive to us. When she was stressed out, she would beat us. You know, so I'm not saying I was a good kid at all. I did some stuff, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't deserve all of that, you feel me? Like, and so, and it traumatized me as a kid growing up. Again, hip hop was a space for me to feel safe. The music related to me, the language, the words, everything. I was able to articulate the pain that I was going through. And then my father was also abusive, right? So you can imagine for 18 years of my life living in a house like that, how do you think I acted outside the house? Right? Because we don't teach kids by what we say. We teach kids by what we do. That's what they're seeing. Like, can I be real with y'all? And the things that we're doing, is we learned it from somewhere. Like, we learned it from somewhere, right? So, with that said, the work we do with young people is specific to the hip hop scene. Is, you know, and it hasn't been until like being married for 15 years I had to really unlearn. And we both, my wife and I, worked for a domestic violence agency. I worked for a data agency that was collecting youth outcomes, positive impacts on programs, things like that. So we were working with grants and all that with Seattle Public Schools. And so I was this data person. I was able to look at the outcomes. It's like, why do we keep doing the same thing expecting different outcomes? You know what I'm saying? We can talk about it. Some kind of story pops up about some sexual harassment. Oh, this person did that. Oh, snap, they put it on blast. But we keep falling back to the same old patterns, y'all. That's what's unhealthy within the hip hop scene, right? So again, I understand the struggle. I understand the pain that it comes from. But we gotta address, you know, the sexual harassment within the scene. We gotta talk about it. We gotta talk about it. Because I'm not saying, again, I'm not talking from a perfect perspective. Like, I did this stuff. I did this, you know, stuff that I said, stuff that I did, stuff I'm trying to manipulate, I'm trying to use my clout, you know what I'm saying? Trying to use my power over people. Like, we know how that works, right? Right, at the end of the day, like, it's keep it at dance, keep it at that. Like, we can't be touching nobody without permission. You feel me? Like, that's really what it comes down to. Like, we have to have an equal human respect for one another. And I didn't know that as a kid. So our work is around prevention. If we can teach young cats the consequences of what it takes, if you catch a case, that's like $20,000, $30,000, you know what I'm saying? We already broke, you know, on a legal tip. You got that type of money, you know what I'm saying? And it's gonna dig us even a more hole of poverty if we're not watching our actions, if you catch a case, right? So this is the prevention work that we do. We're trying to get ahead of it. Right? So I'm gonna stop talking with that. So again, the love, the acceptance, the affirmation, the family, sense of unity and family for poor kids coming up. That's what I love about hip hop. The expression. There's a healing agency in that, right? We could find identity in that. But there's some stuff about our culture, just like my Asian culture, it wasn't all right. Stuff that my mom and dad did, they taught me, that wasn't cool. The same thing applies to hip hop. There's some things about our culture that's dope. There's some things that's got to go, y'all. Like, right, it's 2022. Us fellas, we gotta talk about it. We gotta hold each other accountable. See, all love.
Yeah, I think combined we're supposed to have 5 minutes, is that right?
No, go ahead. You got this.
I'm just gonna piggyback off of what Louis was saying too, and then what Rock was saying before, but just for me coming in as a female into the scene, I didn't feel safe. I fell in love with hip hop when I was in high school, But when I started to do the after school, going to the community centers, that's when the real life started for me. And that's when I felt like, man, am I like just coming in here to get hit on? Or am I coming in here to practice? Am I coming in here because I want to learn? Or am I coming in here because like 3 dudes are trying to ask for my number? And so with that, it just made me feel like in this space, like, where am I supposed to go? And then why do I have to extra prove myself when any of these guys coming around can just be and do whatever, but I feel like I had a different set of expectations. And that was really hard for me, right? So it made me take a step back a little bit, and I honestly had to find my own space. But throughout the time, just really learning again, and you know, just what Louie's saying, I'm a guest, I'm Chinese American, I'm a daughter of immigrants. Much love to my parents too. But being, you know, having that dual identity was really difficult, and I found so much of my love and my passion in who I was in hip hop. It just made me feel so good, and it gave me so much of my passion in the things that I wanted to do. And the big part of it is advocacy. And I want to bring it all the way back to Cindy Campbell, right? Like, everybody talks about Cool Herc, but Cindy Campbell doesn't get that much props because she's the one who wanted to have the back-to-school jam that he started to DJ at. It's because of her that she wanted to give resources to her community. It was her that she wanted to give all these young kids to look fresh, to feel good, to have these things to come into school because they didn't get it anywhere else. And I think that was a big thing for me personally to understand. Like, we didn't have the words to it. I'm in nonprofit now, so I'm writing all these grants and I'm learning all these big old words, but I didn't know what advocacy was, I just did it. And I think hip hop was that forefront of it, where we are advocates. Every single person that is showing love and giving peace, love, unity, and having fun, you're advocating for the community, for people that you see that may not have much, but are trying to find a space, a safe space. And so with a lot of like the news coming around in the last several years with some OGs and other people with allegations, it honestly just pressed me, and I had a really hard time. I couldn't sleep on it for like a couple years. And for a while I felt like, you know, we can't just like put people on blast on Facebook or, you know, whatever. We can't just talk about it and like Louie said, it just goes away. There has to be something more that we could do. And even in our community, it was like a continuation of like, oh, you heard about this, you heard about that, you heard about him. And then it was like nothing else. And then you have this community that's left with trauma, and then there's no resources for them. And it's just like, let's put them to the side because, you know, whatever. We can't just slap accountability with all these other folks and then not have any practice spots. But then I'm like, well, what about all these people that have been hurt? We're not doing nothing about it, and we're talking about unity? That makes no sense to me. So we put together this campaign. It's called No Excuses, and Asia was on the panel, and with a bunch of other people throughout the U.S. too, and community members, OGs, parents, youth, young people. And the basic premises of the campaign is to really have a voice for our community and do trainings for our scene to advocate and educate so that there's no more sexual violence that is going on, that we're advocating for safety and an atmosphere of no tolerance for violence and toxic behavior. And it can be doable. We know it's the long game. We know it's not going to be overnight. But we're not the first ones to do it. They've been doing it. Cindy Campbell started it. We're just getting on that train so that we can continue that forward movement to have some consistency. So the desire that we have, we're actually doing one with No Easy Props on Monday. But it's really talking through like cultural microaggressions, you know, passivity, gaslighting, predatory grooming. Let's get these real conversations happening now so that we don't just do something when something pops up. There has to be some ongoing. We can't let our community stay in our trauma. It has to move from being trauma-informed. Everybody who's in schools hear that word. We gotta move that to healing-centered engagement. That's why we use hip-hop to do that. It's for healing engagement, to move forward. And we can do it all together. Any more questions about that too, we're down to answer, but I feel like there's so much we can talk about here. But you know, big ups to Rock too for a lot of things that she was talking about, because women don't have much of a voice, and we gotta build that platform. And brothers, we need you for that. Straight up, we need that, right? Please, thank you.
Thank you, Louie. There's an arts organization in Seattle. Please look up their work, No Excuses. is the manual, is the booklet. You can order them, you could make them available to your community, to your community centers, to to your schools, to programs. So we're excited to move a lot of this forward through a lot of the programming we're doing, because hip hop as the arts is a vehicle for healing and expression, but we can also have that other opportunity to now really navigate healthy relationships through it. So it's exciting. I want to jump in with Quick Step, and when we talk about mental health and we talk about the battle culture, I want to get your understanding a little bit about your impression about trauma in general that people have sustained, especially men in hip hop, and this battle culture that evolved out of it. And has that helped the trauma? Has it reinforced it? I mean, how do you see that working, and what do you feel again from the past maybe we could keep, but maybe moving forward that we could do better with?
Yeah, the first thing I noticed about our dance, before dance came along, it was called a challenge, right? Tap dancers used to challenge one another. They had an exchange. When our dance came along, it was called a battle. We were at war. In this city, in New York City, the Bronx, just New York period, they were told to drop dead by the president. And if you look around us, it was like a third world war country. A third world country at World War III. All the buildings were decimated. You walk out your building, 5-block radius, there was no buildings except yours. And yours didn't have heat or water. No hot water. But you had to step out of your building looking fly. Looking fly, going down the block, possibly to get jumped for your sneakers. Going to the block party, you made it there with your sneakers or your clothes, but you might get your reputation taken out by somebody who wanted to smoke you in the battle. So somebody wanted to smoke you, right? So they wanted to actually kill your reputation, then take your sneakers. Sometimes people went home naked on the bus, because they went to the wrong neighborhood. So you were battling all of the time. So I took the terminology battle cry and realized that's what a lot of B-boys did. They were crying at home, crying for attention. And when you had this battle, it was a battle cry for who you were and who you needed to be. But after years and years of battling, and that's all you know, you begin to fight yourself. And you begin to lose that war with yourself. Because hip hop was a platform and an outlet for expression. But after a certain amount of period of time, it's like having a Band-Aid on a gash. Now you're just acting out. And men don't know how to be men, they're just boys. B-boys is till about you're 16 years old. You're still a kid. But in the city, you're 12 years old going on 25. So I decided not to call myself a B-boy, I wanted to be a breaker. When the community said, yo, we're breakers, that to me made a lot of sense, because we're breaking through to the other side. Breaking will break you down, build you back up, so you can break through to who you're supposed to be. It's like being a martial artist. It's like being like a ghetto samurai. You learn how to sharpen your sword. But with that sword, you have to cut away the jungle that's in front of you, not the people who are backing you up. And a lot of times we stab one another and slice each other so we can stand out in front. Now you're like, yes, it's about me, but when it's just about you, you are self-centered. When you are centered, it's about everyone around you who made you who you are. And you can't be somebody without anybody backing you up. So if you cut everybody around you, you're cutting your own roots. Stop cutting your roots. When you get into hip hop, a lot of us come from broken homes. And we look for father figures, mother figures, brother figures, and a lot of these people are traumatized. So now we're being raised by a broken family and wonder why hip hop is in the state of emergency it is right now. We're in the first 50 years of hip hop. It's really young compared to everything else that's been around for 500 years. We are still growing as a people, and we're still making mistakes. But from those mistakes, you learn who you're supposed to be as a people. This started in New York, but it's worldwide. We have brothers from New York City all the way to the West Coast. And there's a lot of misunderstandings that are happening that are now coming into the light. And so through this, I was able to grow into who I am today. Now, I'm 54 years old, but I don't look at it through that lens. Hip hop made me look at myself as if though I'm a computer. I'm 5.4. Who I was last year, I'm not that this year. And every year I upgrade, and I'm gonna get better. So by the time I leave this planet, there'll be an operating system for the next generation to use. So you have to think of yourself as an operating system, but not really an operating system, but operating souls. We're more than computers. Remember that thing in Beach Street, Melly Mel said, don't be a slave to no computer? That was real. Because right now, what we're doing is imitating computers, what we used to do with our minds hundreds of years ago. We were able to communicate. You know when you think about somebody, and then your phone rings? That's real. Computers are trying to do that right now. But we've been doing that for years, hundreds of years, for millennia. So the way hip hop came about, it's a grassroots movement to reach out to my brothers on the West Coast who had a funk movement. They were doing something before we were doing something in New York City. Lockers and poppers out here in the 60s, they already planted a seed. And then somewhere in New York City, another seed was being planted, and that was able to build a bridge with people instead of building a wall. So I think this trauma that we're going through is a good thing because it allows us to understand why we needed the battle, and now we're in the phase where we need to heal. Because after a battle can only go on for so long, then you need time to heal. And I think that's really important for us to recognize as a people. And a lot of these people who are on the front lines are women. Who's organizing this right now? Who's organizing this? Women. And for the men who back women up, we get a lot of heat because of that. But women who are in the trenches, they know that they have men who are with them in the trenches. And sometimes it doesn't matter what gender you are you willing to take the front lines? Are you willing to take the reins? And a lot of times women take the reins, even as single moms. They make the household work, while a lot of men bounce and try to find themselves and don't realize that they're lost. Right? So when you come back home to hip hop has a lot of the things that we're looking for, but we discarded them. Hip hop culture is different from hip hop culture. Hip hop culture is something that is for consumers, but when you don't realize it consumes you. It doesn't give anything to you, it takes from you. Hip hop culture actually is something that gives back and forth to one another. And through that, you can find the healing. So when I hear about people trying to find healing through the pain they've been through, hip hop can do that. It can do it through the music, it can do it through the movement, and that's what's the most important thing. The movement of a people is what heals. When you go to a dope jam in this building, is not what's dope. What's dope is the people in it. Because when the jam is over, what do we do outside? We talk for the next 3 hours. And security gotta tell us to go home, like, yo, we gotta go. The jam ended at 7, it's 11:30. It happens all the time. So there's a lot of healing here, but we have to understand what needs to be healed. You know what I mean? And there was, there's, like people say, there was a lot of things that people did when they were growing up because they didn't have the capacity to express what they needed to express. They can only do it on the floor, on the mic, on the wall, on the turntables, because they needed to battle their way to the front. But after the battle's over, it's time to heal. And that's what this is for, and I'm glad to be here with y'all to heal. And before you can heal, before each one can teach one, each one has to reach one. So let's reach out to one another. Let's reach out to one another and heal together. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Greg. I think that's a good segue to Pop-Tart. And because Quick did touch